Hey Alexis, did you know that the design of the bullet train was inspired by the kingfisher bird?
Really?
Yeah, because apparently when they enter water, they do it like so elegantly that it doesn't make a splash. So they use like the a designer was like, "Ooh, let me coin that so that we can make bullet trains less noisy."
That is so cool. I was about to say, maybe not for the bullet train to like
Well,
go into the water, but I
no.
see the vision. I see the vision.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Green Thread. I'm Allie, your host.
And I'm Alexis.
And we're here again to pull on that climate thread to bring more green, sustainable living to you.
Always. All the good green stuff. Always. All the time.
Well, some green stuff. We can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about a term called biomimicry.
Yes. So that is quite the term. And
Yeah.
I honestly didn't really. I could assume what it meant based on the roots of it, but if you don't know what biomimicry is, it is the practice of learning from and emulating the strategies found in nature to solve human design challenges. So really it's about looking at nature as a model for what we can do with either architecture or any type of project or model. We could use it for really anything, just looking to nature and looking to copy it in some way, whether that's its form or its function. We can really learn a lot from nature.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we've mimicked nature, I think, subconsciously for a long time, but to see that like there's actual specialists that are using that to imitate and to re-articulate how nature is able to do things more efficiently to make us more efficient. And I think that's really beautiful to see all these random people that probably don't love nature as much as we do, but are acknowledging and accepting it for something bigger than what it is. Because the first time that we technically have seen biomimicry articulated was by Leonardo da Vinci with his whole little like human design. Because that was based on birds, so like thinking of the human wing.
Yeah.
Granted, there wasn't really anything that was like done or I mean, he went on to create other things with it, but there wasn't anything that was like, made directly from that other than that,
The
design
image of
exactly.
it. Yeah.
But that was kind of the first time that first thing that I saw when it was like the first time that biomimicry was seen in society. And then there's also somebody else, I think it was another famous artist who used it for a glider. Like just the whole bird thing. Like, I think birds were just a big beginner step.
Definitely. I think the fascination with birds, I think that comes from the idea of flight.
Yes.
And I don't know this for sure. I didn't really research this. I'm just kind of spitballing my ideas right now. But thinking about making the first plane.
Yes.
Thinking about a bird's wings versus, okay, how can I keep this much larger object suspended and keep it in flight for a long time? So, yeah, I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, early people were just obsessed with getting off the ground for whatever reason it was. But they're like, let's go.
That's so funny. Like, why are we so obsessed with being in the air? Like, what? Like, that's so Anyway, I don't know. Human inventions amaze me all the time. I'm like, how did someone think of this? And I'm like, how are we gonna progress from this? How, like this, we could fly in the sky. Are you kidding me? How are we gonna get anywhere past that? Like, the bar is so high.
I know. Because
Anyway.
then once we get there, then what's after that? Which I mean, now we're like in space, so I think it went further.
Yeah, it did. It definitely did.
And then not only like in terms of an action that we were using nature to inspire us from, but also with our architecture, which we'll talk more later in the episode. But as far as like an intro to that, there's more things that have been based on like human/nature made, I guess is a better way of like we've used specifically with what's called the Eiffel Tower. If you haven't heard of it, the structure of it was actually inspired by the human femur because of how lightweight that bone is. So they were making sure that it was a lightweight as well, which is really interesting. Like I didn't look at the Eiffel Tower thinking that's a femur.
Yeah, you wouldn't think looking at something that that's just so. How do people think of this? How do people think of this?
The whole episode, Alexa's gonna be like, how?
I know. How? That's the saying of the episode is how.
There was also a professor that got his idea of like smart adhesives by mussel glue, or like the glue that's made by the mucus in mussels. And I was like,
Oh my God.
what? Some people are just too smart for their own good, in my opinion.
Literally.
But I mean, I'm glad that he found something to be inspired by to make smart adhesives, because the amount of times that I have needed one we use so many for this.
Without command strips, I don't know where I would be in my life. I don't know if we would be here.
Yeah, I'd have naked walls all over the place. Like I wouldn't even try to hook things up. It would just be gone. But anyways, with that being said, there's 4 factors that are big influences on the ability to adopt mimicry or implement it into your structures, which is regulations, cost and risk, knowledge, and technology. There's more that obviously have come into that, but those are the main 4. Usually those are seen in the construction industry, because I saw that biomimicry is a huge product of construction, as we're talking about architecture, but it's like the biggest field in which people are like making sure that there are sustainable practices and or having to constantly think of how to build things. It was just like the CI construction industry is like one of the main places in which biomimicry is seen or implemented. And then there's a big influence on sustainability within biomimicry as well, through what we call nature inspiration, emulation, and imitation. So that was kind of fun to like see. There's like a whole graphic, which I can insert as well, to show you kind of the cycle between all 3 of those. They kind of speak for themselves, like imitation, inspiration, and emulation. I mean, it's there. But those are the steps in which they use to encourage the inclusion of, eco-friendly materials, energy efficiency, even the circulatory design process, which is what they use to make things more sustainable. So that was a couple of cute things that I found about biomimicry, and I was like, it really does influence everything. It's like the big umbrella, and everything underneath it is impacted by it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking, I was thinking, as you said, energy efficient, I was thinking that it's not only about copying the form of something necessarily, it's also about the way that the environment works, the way that things work in harmony, the way that things are balanced. It can also work in that way. So even just designing something that may model a specific community or ecosystem in the area, or, just to kind of blend in almost with the local ecosystem. I think that's super cool too, because it's not just looking for, aesthetics or cute stuff. It actually makes a difference and could help the local ecosystem.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into designing buildings and things that we don't even know about.
Shout out architecture majors.
Oh yeah, y'all do it all, and I don't.
Shout out construction workers.
I don't know how you do it,
yeah,
but you do it. And sometimes there are things that I question, like in the city, there's like certain buildings are next to each other. I'm like, you probably could have done that a different way. But I can't imagine what those people that had to, because there's people that are in the environmental field of finding soil chemistry to make sure that that's even feasible to build on, and like it steps from the ground up. And so I know there's a lot of thought that goes into the process of creating these buildings and these constructed things that goes into planning, goes into actually building it. And I don't know, it's crazy to think about, but also I'm glad that there's a process that we have identified that helps that, go quicker, and it doesn't hurt the ecosystem like you were talking about, and it's all around good. And also like the fact that it's literally life mimicry, like biomimicry. So I don't know, there's a word for everything, I'm finding out.
Yeah, I didn't know one of them in the previous episode is biophilia.
Yes, yeah.
And I had people asking me what that is, and I'm like, well, let me tell you about it. Go watch that episode if you haven't already. Colors in Nature, I believe, is the one that we had mentioned it in.
Yep.
Yeah, go watch that. But talking about mimicking the way that things function in nature and how they kind of can be beneficial to us, I found an example of a building in Zimbabwe. It is the Eastgate Center. It's an office and shopping complex inspired by termite mounds. So they are able to maintain a stable temperature through natural ventilation. It uses kind of it more utilizes the airflow that comes through the building versus having to use air conditioning. So I found that to be extremely fascinating. We can, for those of you that are watching us with your lovely eyeballs, we can insert a photo and we will insert a link for you guys if you want to read more about that or see a photo of it. I thought that was really fascinating.
And that's actually kind of funny you say that, because I know a lot of like the cave systems in like New Mexico, they have similar type structures with their, I guess, huts. I don't really know if that's the correct term, so don't get mad at me. But they look kind of like termite mounds, and I think that's like interesting. I wonder if that kind of ties into igloos and things like that that are like have the little one hole, or they're like taller.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've done a lot of growth and uniqueness in the recent, I guess, inspiration behind architecture and how, you know, to implement things like you're talking about the termite mounds. But it's still kind of the basics. Like, you know, there's always some sort of creature that has a house or does something a certain way. Like we're talking about with the kingfishers. If you missed that, if you're just listening, go watch our video and you can hear a fun fact about kingfishers. But it's the way that, you know, organisms do something that like we're like, oh, that would be kind of cool to do blah blah blah, you know. Like it's a whole, sorry, I'm like rambling because I'm so excited about this kind of stuff. Like when I got into it, it was like a whole deep dive, like we've mentioned in previous episodes of the different things we geek out on. But I just kept going. There's so many different examples, and I'm usually the one to list off all these things, and I didn't really want to do that in this episode, but there were so many, and I think they're like, once you learn about them, you have a different view of how, you know, buildings are made or how the inspiration goes in the process of making them, and it's just very interesting.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. And I mean, just by learning about this, you can really look at construction and architecture through a different lens and more through a biological lens, a more nature focused lens, which I think is really awesome. And I think we would benefit a lot from having more environmentalists and more biologists in urban planning and city planning, because I can only imagine, like we were talking about earlier, there's so much that goes into construction, and that goes from the materials to the design to actually making it and seeing if it works. You know, I feel like it could be a lot of trial and error because sometimes the blueprint might not always work out when you actually build it. But we could take a lot of inspiration from nature, and I've always thought about it in more of an aesthetic way for maybe inspiring art or inspiring myself, just my creative process, or just for personal reasons, but never really have I thought about it on a grand scale like that, okay, this can inspire and inform everything that we do, really. I mean, it's all around us. It's everywhere. So I think that's so cool.
I think if we get on that, or I'm sure there's people out there that do this. So I didn't do enough deep dive to really like understand everything that goes into it. But I think if we get like on it more, we'll realize that to implement these sustainable practices will cost us less. Even though like right now, like you've heard of green walls, and if you haven't, they're like these, it's literally called a green wall for a reason, but it's like this big wall on the side of a building that's used for like native plants, even like things to attract pollinators. It's just used as an environmental practice to create biodiversity in an area that doesn't have the means to do so. But like a lot of the times buildings can't put those in because they cost too much. And so I think if we had more environmentalists behind it, then we could find ways to do it that doesn't cost as much, because we always talk about the money makes the world go around. And I find that's a lot of what deters people from doing things more sustainably, is because they find it costs more.
Definitely. I even saw something on social media the other day. It's like, hey girlies, where can I find this type of, it was like a dress or something, where can I find this that's not, you know, horrible fast fashion, but also doesn't cost me an arm and a leg. So
Yeah.
it's always that trade off of, okay, as a consumer, how much can I afford? But also it's weighing on my conscience. It can be a difficult balance. But like you said, as we always say, money makes the world go round, and it may cost us more initially to get these things, to get these more sustainable materials, to come up with these processes, hire more environmentalists in these fields. But at the end of the day, and in the long run, it would be so much better. It'd be
really
better for
would.
everyone's wallets. It would not cost nearly as much in waste, in just transporting waste. And if the building or whatever product needed to be demolished or discarded, I think that would be a much different process than it would be without environmentalists.
I know. Environmentalists need a lot more attention and a lot more love than we give them. Speaking as one, but like also just in general, like there's so many different things that go into this that I feel like they could increase the speed in which they are given to the public or made possible, but also make things easier, because I don't know nature literally is the foundation of what we're talking about in this episode of inspiring us to do things certain ways. And so if we just listen to the mother, then the mother knows best.
Mother knows best. Mother Earth knows best. She is the blueprint. She is why we're even here. So we should listen to her.
We love you, mother.
We love you, mother.
Well, thank y'all for listening in. We might do some more like episodes with this topic just to kind of go further into it, as we were just brushing the surface on it, in my opinion. But if you want to learn more, we'll link our resources below of where we found our information. And we hope that we'll see you in our next conversation, because we always love to yap about Earth.
Yes, the conversation does not have to end here. So thank y'all for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.